The Memory Keeper, when 7-year-old Emma first whispered the words, "I used to live in the White House with the Red Barn." Her mother, Sarah, thought it was just another one of her daughter's vivid, imaginative games. But when Emma began crying, inconsolably, insisting that her real mama was waiting for her to come home, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the October wind rattling their kitchen windows. It started 3 weeks after they'd moved to the small town of Millbrook, Vermont. Emma had been unusually quiet since the move, which Sarah attributed to the stress of leaving their old life in Boston behind. The divorce had been hard on everyone, and this fresh start in Sarah's childhood hometown was supposed to heal them. Both. But instead of settling in, Emma seemed to be drifting further away, lost in a world that Sarah couldn't understand. The morning everything changed, Emma was sitting at the breakfast table, absently stirring her cereal, when she suddenly looked up with those piercing blue eyes and said, "Mama, when can we go see my chickens?" Sarah paused, coffee mug halfway to her lips. "What chickens, sweetheart?" "The ones behind the White House. I have to feed them every morning before school, or Papa gets angry." Emma's voice carried a weight that seemed impossible for a 7-year-old. "And Buttercup, my cow. She's probably wondering where I am." The specificity of it made Sarah's stomach tighten. This wasn't the usual let's pretend game. Emma spoke with the casual certainty of someone recounting their daily routine. "Emma, we don't have any chickens or cows. You know that." Emma's face crumpled. "Not here, Mama. At my real house. The one with the big oak tree where I buried my doll when she broke." Tears began streaming down her cheeks. "Why won't you take me home?" Sarah knelt beside her daughter's chair, heart racing. "This is our home now, baby. We talked about this." "No." Emma's voice rose to a wail. "This isn't my home. My home has the red barn and the well with the squeaky handle. And Mama, Rose makes apple butter in the big copper pot." She was sobbing now, her small body shaking. "I want to go home. I want Mama Rose." Sarah had dealt with tantrums before, but this felt different. Emma wasn't being defiant or manipulative. She was genuinely heartbroken, as if she'd lost something precious and couldn't understand why no one would help her find it. Over the next few days, the stories became more detailed and more disturbing. Emma would wake up crying, saying she dreamed about helping Papa milk the cows before dawn. She drew pictures of a white farmhouse with remarkable architectural detail for a child her age. A wraparound porch, specific window placements, even a weather vane on the barn roof. When Sarah asked where she'd seen such a house, Emma would look at her with frustrated confusion. "I lived there, Mama, before I came to be with you." The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Sarah was working from her laptop in the living room when she heard Emma talking to someone upstairs. Assuming it was an imaginary friend, Sarah didn't think much of it until she heard Emma say, "I know you're sad, Mama Rose. I'm sad too. But I can't come back right now." Sarah crept up the stairs and found Emma sitting on her bed, having what appeared to be a one-sided conversation with the empty air beside her. "She says the chickens miss me," Emma said without looking up when she noticed Sarah in the doorway. "And that Papa is worried because I haven't been helping with the harvest." "Emma, who are you talking to?" "Mama Rose. She comes to visit sometimes, but she can't stay long because it makes her too tired." Emma's matter-of-fact tone was more unsettling than any tantrum. "She wants me to tell you that the house is still there, and that maybe if you took me to see it, I wouldn't be so sad all the time." That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, Sarah found herself sitting at her computer, typing "White Farmhouse Red Barn Millbrook, Vermont" into the search engine. She told herself she was just humoring her daughter's imagination, but deep down, she was terrified of what she might find. The first few results were tourism sites and real estate listings, nothing that matched Emma's descriptions. But then, buried on the third page of results, she found a link to a local historical society article titled The Whitmore Farm, a Century of Agriculture in Millbrook. Sarah's hands trembled as she clicked the link. The page loaded slowly, and when the image finally appeared, she gasped. There, in a black and white photograph dated 1915, was the exact house Emma had been drawing. Every detail was perfect. The wraparound porch, the window placements, even the weather vane on the red barn roof dot, according to the article. The Whitmore farm had been owned by the same family for over a century. The original farmhouse was built in 1898 by Thomas and Rose Whitmore, who had raised 7 children there. The farm had been particularly prosperous in the early 1900s, known throughout the region for its dairy cattle and prize-winning chickens. Sarah scrolled down, her heart pounding, until she found what she was looking for. A family photograph from 1912. Thomas Whitmore stood proudly beside his wife Rose, surrounded by their children. And there, in the front row, was a little girl who looked so much like Emma that Sarah had to grip the edge of her desk to steady herself. The caption read, "The Whitmore family, 1912. Pictured, Thomas and Rose Whitmore with their children Margaret, James, Catherine, little Emma, Samuel, Mary, and baby Joseph." Little Emma, the girl in the photograph, was named Emma. Sarah stared at the screen until her eyes burned. The resemblance was uncanny. The same blonde curls, the same bright blue eyes, even the same stubborn set to the jaw. But it was impossible. It had to be a coincidence. She read further. Emma Whitmore had been born in 1905, making her 7. Years old in the photograph, the same age as her daughter now. The article mentioned that little Emma had been particularly close to her mother Rose, and had shown an unusual aptitude for farm work, often helping with the chickens and assisting in the kitchen. Then Sarah found the detail that made her blood run cold. Emma Whitmore had died in the influenza pandemic of 1918, just 13 years old. The article noted that she had been buried in the family plot behind the farmhouse, beneath the large oak tree that still stood on the property, the same oak tree where her Emma claimed to have buried her broken doll. Sarah slammed the laptop shut, her hands shaking. This was insane. She was a rational person, a software engineer who dealt in logic and facts. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Emma had seen the photograph somewhere, or heard someone talking about the farm. Children were like sponges, absorbing information and weaving it into elaborate fantasies. But even as she tried to rationalize it, she couldn't shake the image of that little girl in the photograph, or the way Emma spoke about Mama Rose with such genuine love and longing. The next morning, Emma was quieter than usual. She picked at her breakfast and kept glancing toward the window as if she was waiting for something. "Mama," she said finally, "Mama Rose came to see me again last night. She said you found the picture." Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. "What picture, sweetheart?" "One of our family. She said you were scared, but that you don't need to be. She just wants me to remember, so I won't forget her completely." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She says forgetting hurts more than missing someone. Against every rational instinct, Sarah heard herself asking, "Emma, what happened to you?" "In your other life, I mean." Emma was quiet for a long moment, staring down at her hands. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I got sick. Really, really sick. Mama Rose tried to make me better, but I couldn't breathe right, and I was so hot all the time." She looked up at Sarah with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "I wasn't scared, though. Mama Rose held my hand the whole time, and she sang to me until I went to sleep." Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. Whether this was memory or imagination, the emotion behind it was real. Her daughter was carrying the weight of another child's love and loss, and it was breaking both their hearts. "Do you want to see the house?" Sarah asked, surprising herself with the words. Emma's face lit up for the first time in weeks. "Really? You'll take me?" "I'll take you." The drive to the old Whitmore farm took 20 minutes through winding country. Roads lined with maple trees just beginning to turn. Emma sat in the back seat, unusually still, her hands folded in her lap. As they got closer, she began giving Sarah directions. "Turn left at the big rock," she said, pointing to a boulder that marked a dirt road turnoff. "The house is just past the hill." Sarah hadn't looked up the address. She'd planned to drive around until they found it, but Emma seemed to know exactly where they were going. When they crested the hill, Sarah had to pull over. There it was, exactly as it had appeared in the photograph and in Emma's drawings. The white farmhouse with its wraparound porch, the red barn, the weather vane spinning lazily in the afternoon breeze. Even the large oak tree was there, its massive trunk and spreading branches dominating the front yard. "There it is," Emma whispered, her voice filled with wonder and sadness. "There's my house." They sat in the car for several minutes, neither of them speaking. The property looked well maintained, clearly still occupied, but there was something timeless about it, as if the years between 1912 and now had barely touched it. Finally, Emma unbuckled her seatbelt. "Can we get out?" "I want to see if the well still squeaks." They walked slowly up the gravel driveway, Emma leading the way with the confidence of someone who knew every stone and rut. Sure enough, there was an old well near the side of the house, complete with a hand pump that let out. A rusty squeak when Emma worked the handle. "I knew it," she said with satisfaction. "Papa always said he was going to oil that, but he never did." As they explored the yard, an elderly woman emerged from the house. She was probably in her 70s, with silver hair and kind eyes that reminded Sarah uncomfortably of the woman in the historical photograph. "Can I help you folks?" she asked, but her tone was curious rather than defensive. Sarah felt her cheeks burn. How could she possibly explain what they were doing here? "I'm sorry, we were just... My daughter was interested in the old farmhouse. We didn't mean to trespass." The woman's gaze shifted to Emma, who was standing beneath the oak tree, running her small hands over the bark, as if greeting an old friend. "That's quite all right," the woman said slowly. "I'm Margaret Whitmore Chun. My family has owned this property for over a century." Sarah's heart stopped. "Whitmore?" "Yes. My great-great-grandmother was Rose Whitmore. This was her house." Margaret's eyes never left Emma, who had now moved to a specific spot beneath the tree and was kneeling in the dirt. "That little girl, she looks remarkably like someone in her old family photographs." Before Sarah could respond, Emma called out, "I found it. Mama, I found where I buried my doll." She was digging in the soft earth with her hands, her face bright with excitement. Sarah started to tell her to stop, but Margaret held up a hand. "Let her," she said quietly. "I'd like to see what she finds." Emma dug for several minutes, her small hands working methodically. Finally, she sat back with a triumphant smile, holding something in her dirt-covered palm dot. It was a tiny porcelain doll's head, cracked down the middle, but still recognizable. The paint had mostly worn away, but traces of blonde hair and blue eyes were still visible. Margaret gasped, "Oh my goodness! That's impossible. What is it?" Sarah asked, though part of her already knew. "When I was a little girl, my great-grandmother Rose used to tell me stories about her daughter Emma. She said Emma had a favorite doll that broke, and she buried it under this tree because she couldn't bear to throw it away." Margaret's voice was shaking. "Rose said she could never bring herself to dig it up after Emma died, because it was the last thing her daughter had touched." Emma looked up at them both, the doll's head cradled gently in her hands. "She was my favorite. Her name was Clara, and she had the prettiest dress. I was so sad when she broke, but Mama Rose said sometimes broken things are still precious. Margaret sank down onto her knees beside Emma, tears streaming down her face. How could you possibly know that? Emma considered the question seriously. I just remember. Sometimes I remember other things too, like how Mama Rose smelled like cinnamon, and how Papa would let me ride on his shoulders when we went to check on the cows. She looked at the doll's head in her hands. But mostly I remember how much they loved me. The three of them sat in silence beneath the oak tree as the afternoon sun filtered through the leaves. Sarah felt as if she was witnessing something sacred, a connection that transcended everything she thought she understood about life and death and the nature of memory itself. "Would you like to come inside?" Margaret asked finally. "I have some photographs I think you might find interesting." The interior of the farmhouse had been modernized over the years, but the bones of the original structure remained. Emma moved through the rooms with easy familiarity, pointing out where furniture used to be and commenting on changes that had been made. "The kitchen table was bigger," she said, running her hand along the current table's edge. "And there was a big black stove right there where Mama Rose would make bread every morning." Margaret nodded. "That's exactly right. The old wood stove was there until the 1950s. She led them to a living room lined with bookshelves and family photographs. From a wooden box on the mantel, she pulled out a collection of old pictures, including several that Sarah recognized from the Historical Society website. But there were others she hadn't seen, candid shots of the family at work and play. In one, little Emma Whitmore was feeding chickens in the yard. In another, she was helping Rose in the kitchen, standing on a wooden stool to reach the counter. "This was always my favorite," Margaret said, handing Emma a photograph of the little girl sitting beneath the oak tree, holding the same doll she had just unearthed. Great-grandmother Rose kept this on her knitstand until the day she died. She said it helped her remember Emma as she was, happy and full of life. Emma studied the photograph intently, then looked up at Margaret. "She kept my picture?" "She never stopped missing you," Margaret said softly. "She used to say that love doesn't end just because someone goes away." As the afternoon wore on, Emma shared more memories. The taste of Rose's apple butter, the sound of Thomas's voice calling, the cows in for milking, the feeling of warm eggs in her basket when she collected them each morning. Some details Margaret could verify from family stories, others were lost to time, but all of them carried the ring of truth. When it was time to leave, Emma carefully placed the doll's head back in the spot where she had found it. "Why don't you want to keep it?" Sarah asked. Emma smoothed the dirt back over the tiny grave with gentle hands. "Because this is where she belongs. This is where I left her, and this is where she's been waiting." She stood up and brushed the dirt from her knees. "Besides, I don't need to take her with me to remember." Margaret walked them to their car, moving slowly, as if reluctant to let them go. At the last moment, she pressed something into Emma's hand. A small, faded photograph. "This is for you," she said. "It's a picture of Rose in her garden. She would have wanted you to have it." Emma looked down at the photograph of a woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, surrounded by flowers. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll take good care of it." As they drove away, Sarah watched Emma in the rearview mirror. Her daughter was holding the photograph carefully, a peaceful expression on her face that Sarah hadn't seen since before the move. "How do you feel, sweetheart?" Sarah asked. Emma was quiet for a moment, and smiled. "Better. I think Mama Rose knows I haven't forgotten her now, and I think she's not so worried about me anymore." "What do you mean?" "She told me that loving someone doesn't mean you have to stay sad forever. She said she wants me to be happy in this life, with you." Emma looked out the window at the passing landscape. "I think I can do that now." Over the following weeks, Emma's nighttime tears stopped. She still remembered her life as Emma Whitmore, but the memories no longer seemed to cause her pain. Instead, they became something precious that she carried with her, a reminder that love transcends time and that being remembered is its own form of immortality. Sarah never found a rational explanation for what had happened. She stopped looking for 1. Some mysteries, she realized, were more beautiful when left unsolved. What mattered was that her daughter was healing, learning to balance the love she carried from one life with the love she was building in this one. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Emma would tell Sarah stories about the farm, not with the desperate urgency of those first weeks, but with the gentle nostalgia of someone sharing cherished memories. And sometimes, when the light was just right, Sarah could almost see them too. A little girl with blonde curls, feeding chickens in a farmyard that existed somewhere between memory and dream, watched over by a woman whose love had proven stronger than death itself. The photograph of Rose in her garden sits on Emma's knitstand now, next to pictures of their new life in Millbrook. 2 families, 2 loves, one heart big enough to hold them both. And in the space between what we can explain and what we choose to believe, a little girl named Emma learned that some connections are too deep for death to sever, and that remembering someone with love is the most beautiful gift we can give to those who have gone before us. If you found Emma's story as moving as I did, please consider subscribing to our channel. We share true stories of human connection, unexplained phenomena, and the mysterious ways that love transcends our understanding of life and death. Your subscription helps us continue bringing these remarkable tales to light and ensures you won't miss the next incredible story that reminds us all that there's still magic in this world.